Man, sometimes it creeps me out when I think about ghosts. Some of these dudes are like Ceruledge, who have spectral properties and its armor is what's haunted. And then some of these dudes, like Yamask, were people like you and me who were, I don't know, alive at one point. You know the implications? When you catch Yamask, you're imprisoning someone and using them for battle. I gotta say, that's pretty messed up. However, luckily, today, we are not talking about ghost Pokemon people use. We're talking about the ones no one uses. Whether or not it's because they aren't popular as a design, too hard to get your hands on, or because they're just bad and or outclassed. And this starts with Mismagius. Now, with that said, obviously people are gonna use Mismagius in their playthrough. That much is a given. It's got good coverage, solid stats, and all that jazz. In Scarlet and Violet, it would likely be a solid mainstay on the team until, I don't know, Area 0, where your eyes lay upon its prehistoric pre-evolution and your life changes for either the better or for the worse, as you peep those stats, which are just better than Mismagius. That typing, which is just better than Mismagius. Its ability, which, while not directly better, is still really good. And with booster energy being a thing, it will feel better than Mismagius. The issue with Mismagius is not Mismagius, it is Fluttermane. You could cope with Gengar existing, but man, this has gone too far. Combine this with the fact that 105's speed ain't as fast as it used to be, especially in comparison to Fluttermane's base 135, and all Mismagius enthusiasts will be questioning their life choices, including myself. Misdreavus fans are eating though. Let's just get the bad one out of the way real quick. Banette is a textbook example of just absolutely not real when it comes to its stats. They could give it any move imaginable and it would still be bad. They could let this Pokemon have access to Cecil's Edge, Last Respects, Blood Moon, Fickle Beam with a 100% chance to go off, Scald, and who knows what else. And Banette would still find itself being god-awful. Its abilities aren't real, and its stats just reek of Gen 3 design. The Mega tries to fix this, and sadly, it kinda sorta works, but not really. Prankster and some added bulk and a really big attack is nice. But even with Poltergeist now in its kit, by many competitive players, Mega Banette is considered a noob trap. And if you're trying to use this Pokemon, you're better off using Ceruledge. Speaking of things where you would rather use a similar ghost type, Dusknoir is here for about the reasons you would expect. This Pokemon just does not work. Dusknoir is slow and bulky, but with no form of recovery, and its attacks don't hit hard at all. It's also a walking knockoff target, and because it's played primarily offensively, it's gonna find itself outclassed by other more offensive ghosts regardless of its coverage options. On paper, all the stuff it has access to like the Elemental Punches, Drain Punch, and Poltergeist look good. In practice, it's just a wasted team slot. And then with Eviolite Dusclops being arguably better than it, yeah, things aren't looking so great for our guy. Even in a playthrough, needing both the Reaper Cloth and someone to trade with, yeah, I think I'll just use something else. So, Hoopa Regular's main issue is mostly that Hoopa Unbound exists and does everything just about better than regular Hoopa. No, quite literally. Better stats, arguably better typing, and because of these, it's just an easier Pokemon to use. Nothing too crazy here. Now, with that said, even if regular Hoopa was the only Hoopa and there was no Unbound, while there are definitely still people who would use it because they just like Hoopa, and hell, I'm right there with you, it would not really explode in viability. Despite all of its fancy coverage options and solid offensive typing, base 70's speed isn't cutting it nowadays, even with the Choice Scarf, and knockoff is everywhere. I wouldn't really be trying to use it if the goal was to succeed. Nowadays, it's ranked in PU, where it was outclassed by the next entry, who is banned from the tier as we record this. So, Oricorio Sensu is in a funny spot where it actually got banned from PU. So no one is going to use it in NU though, because it isn't strong enough for the tier. While its Revelation Dance and Quiver Dance are solid attacks, especially when you throw Terra into the mix, its main issue comes from the fact that if you try to use it in NU, you're going to be dealing with some actual demons. Stuff like, funny enough, Basculegion, Flamigo, and Jolteon. Must I really say more about this mon's odds? With that said, it's definitely one of the stronger of the 4 Oricorio forms. Now, why doesn't it get used in a playthrough? Well, by the time you get to Pony Island, where the odds are that you're going to encounter the Sensu form, your team is probably in like what, the 40s? You have a fully developed team by then, and with a different Oricorio already on it. Unless you make room for it, it's just there. Sad days. There is no denying that Houndstone is an unconditionally good boy, and I'm sure that if you use it in your casual playthrough, you have no issue keeping it in the back and waiting for it to be the last member in your party to spam last respects, before you remember that it's a casual playthrough. It's very hard to be in a situation where you only got one Pokemon left to spam last respects to begin with, because for the most part, Pokemon is a pretty easy game. So even if you catch Houndstone, you won't be using it to its full potential. What about not waiting until it's your last Pokemon, and then just waiting until one Pokemon faints to spam a 100 power last respects? With a 101 base attack, yeah, I can see that plan. And if you're wondering why I am only talking about last respects, that's because it's Houndstone's best move, and typically why you slot it on outside of being a good boy. Why am I only talking about your playthrough? Because Houndstone has approximately 0 usage in VGC, and last respects is banned from Smogon OU and below because Sandrush Houndstone and Swift Swim Male Basculegion would have dominated the meta. Actually, Sandrush Houndstone did dominate the meta for the first whole 2 or 3 days of Scarlet and Violet OU. I was there. It sucked. But without last respects, it's a PU mon who uses Will-O-Wisp, Body Press, and Pain Split, along with the ability Fluffy to chill as a physical tank. Nothing crazy. I mean, not only does Runerigus have a really dumb evolution requirement, but bro in your playthrough just doesn't really amount to much last I checked. No Earthquake until level 50 of all things really makes bro a non-mon, because that means that the best you're getting is going to be Shadow Claw, Brutal Swing, and Slam for the first 70% of your playthrough. And at that point, just go use a different ground type. There are plenty. With that said, competitively, man, where do I even begin? While I do find it a little underrated, there is a reason nobody uses this. Cofagrigus is just a better one to use. Less weaknesses, more utility, and access to Pain Split for recovery? Yeah, eat your heart out, Runerigus. Cursula. Yet another mon I consider to be underrated at times, because I am sure it is a solid special attacker in Trick Room if someone would be willing to try it with that base 145 special attack stat. The issue is that even with that number and access to stuff like Giga Drain, Ice Beam, and Hydro Pump for coverage, is that people like their Trick Room mons to be kinda bulky. Sure, that special defense is nothing to laugh at, but the base 50 defense matters a decent bit when taking neutral hits. Lord forbid Mr. Craw is on the phone when this guy is out or you're forced to switch. That physical defense holds it back, and if they gave up some of that base 95 attack and put it into defense, and then with Perish Body as an ability, well, you'd be in business. Also, Eevee like Cursula is just more consistent. Man, where do I get started on Trevenant? Yeah, I know Harvest Citrus Berry is totally a real thing that I'm sure is awesome and all, with stuff like Substitute, Horn Leech, and Leech Seed to really back it up. But I don't know, man. I'm pretty sure despite its cool design, the issue with it is kinda how it plays. This is one of those weird circumstances where bro is just kinda boring from a gameplay perspective. It just sits there, it takes hits, and then heals up, and is just kind of annoying at best. And with Harvest only being 100% reliable under Sun, which you are not putting your grass type in, and then not only does this Pokemon become lame, but it also becomes unreliable. Meanwhile, Gourgeist is out here with 4 forms, so it can at the very least act unique. Yeah, this is another one I do deem to be underrated, but I'm allowed to believe something is underrated while being understanding of why no one uses it. Rotom Regular, I do not believe has ever eaten a day in its life. This poor soul is never caught for what it can do. Well, it kind of is. It's caught so it can get stuffed in a washing machine and do your laundry. But instead of your laundry getting washed, it's your opponent with powerful hydro pumps. The issue with regular Rotom is that despite being the only ghost electric type, its stats are just so miserable in comparison to the other forms. They get buffs for existing. Meanwhile, the only drawback is that regular Rotom is 5 points faster. This is not worth hitting less hard and taking more damage. There is quite literally zero reason to use it over the other Rotoms unless you're so desperate for a spinning, blocking electric type and don't want to use Terra Ghost or something. Well, here you are, I suppose. And I hope it's worth it. And yeah, that's it really. These are the 10 ghost types I don't really believe anyone uses. I was arguing with myself about Spiritomb, but with its ease of access in Scarlet and Violet in comparison to how ruthlessly hard to get it was in previous installments, I decided that this list was better used on the Pokemon that actually no one was going to use for any real reason, unless they're just real super fans of the Pokemon. With that said, let me know what you think. Are there any ghost types on this list that you use? What would you rather have talked about? Let me know down in the comments below.